"You're a disgrace, stay away from this family," Dad said. But at Mom's party, my sister's boyfriend saw me and said, "Evening, boss. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching." "You're a disgrace, don't show your face in this family again," my father shouted, his voice echoing through our family home. I stood frozen in the living room, the family photos on the mantel suddenly feeling like they belonged to strangers. My hands trembled as I clutched my purse, knuckles white from the pressure. 28 years of trying to be good enough, and this is where it led. "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. I'd been helping with the bills for years. I just couldn't make it to Claire's recital because I was working late. "Working?" He scoffed, the disgust in his voice cutting deeper than any knife could. "You call that job of yours work? Pushing papers in some obscure office while your sister is making something of herself?" My mother sat silently on the couch, eyes downcast, refusing to look at me. She wouldn't defend me. She never did. "I'm the one paying half your mortgage," I said quietly. "And the electric bill. And when the furnace broke last winter. Don't throw your charity in our faces." Dad's face reddened. "Claire would help us too if she wasn't focusing on her career. She has real potential." Claire, my 25-year-old sister, stood in the corner with a small, satisfied smirk. The golden child. The one with potential. Never mind that her amazing career as a pharmaceutical sales rep was still entry-level, or that she spent more on designer clothes than on helping our parents. "This isn't about Claire," I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me despite the storm raging inside. "This is about how you've never valued anything I do." "Because you've never done anything worth valuing," he shouted. "Your sister brings prestigious connections to this family. What do you bring except excuses?" The truth was that I brought a lot more than they knew. My obscure office job was actually my position as co-founder of Pacific Genomics, a biotech startup that was quietly revolutionizing healthcare accessibility. But I'd kept the extent of my success modest around my family, partly from humility, partly because I knew they'd only see me differently if I had something they wanted. "Claire's boyfriend is a finance executive," my mother finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. "He's coming to my birthday dinner next week. We'd really prefer if you didn't attend, Ashley." I blinked, the words not quite registering. "You're uninviting me from your birthday?" "It's just that Liam is from a very respectable family," she continued, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "We don't want to have to explain your situation." "My situation," I repeated flatly. "You know what she means," Claire interjected, examining her manicure. "It's awkward explaining what you actually do. At least my career makes sense at dinner parties." I looked around at these three people, my family, and suddenly saw them clearly. They had never been proud of me. They had never tried to understand me. They had only valued what I could provide for them. "If you insist on coming," my father said coldly, "then don't call me your father anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt something shift inside me, like a final thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. "Okay," I said simply. "Okay, what?" Claire asked, genuinely confused by my calm. "Okay, I won't come to Mom's birthday. And I won't call you my father anymore." I turned toward the door, pausing only briefly to look back. "And I won't be sending next month's mortgage payment either." Their faces changed instantly, shock replacing the disdain, concern eclipsing the dismissal. "Ashley, don't be dramatic," my mother started, rising from the couch. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm just done." I opened the door, the spring evening air feeling cleansing against my face. "You can't have it both ways. You can't tell me I'm a disgrace to this family while expecting me to support it. You'd let us lose the house over a little argument?" My father's voice had lost its edge, replaced by disbelief. I met his gaze one last time. "This isn't a little argument. This is years of being treated like I'm nothing. And I've finally realized that's exactly what I am to you, nothing." Until the bills come due. I walked out, closing the door behind me with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than any slam could have. In my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, surprised to find them steady now. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The family that had always made me feel small was about to discover just how significant my absence would be. I sat at my desk in my small apartment, staring at my banking app. The screen displayed a list of recurring payments. $1,900, parents' mortgage. $350, parents' utilities. $200, emergency fund for family needs. My finger hovered over the "Cancel recurring payment" button. Part of me still hesitated, old habits of obligation dying hard. But then I remembered my father's words, my mother's averted eyes, Claire's smirk. They had made their choice. I pressed cancel. 3 times. A notification appeared, all recurring payments successfully canceled. No alarms sounded. No warnings flashed. Just quiet confirmation that after years of carrying my family financially, I was done. I set my phone down, feeling a strange mixture of guilt and relief wash over me. I hadn't anticipated the lightness that came with setting down this burden. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every family dinner where Claire's achievements were celebrated while mine were dismissed. Every time I'd skipped a vacation to cover unexpected expenses for my parents. Every late night I'd stayed at the office to ensure our company's clinical trial succeeded, only to have my family assume I was just doing meaningless paperwork. By morning, my resolve had only strengthened. I walked to our office building, a sleek glass structure just over a block from my apartment. As co-founder of Pacific Genomics, I had helped build this company from the ground up with 3 college friends. We were developing affordable diagnostic tools that could revolutionize healthcare accessibility in underserved communities. My family had no idea. They thought I was some low-level administrative assistant, pushing papers as my father had so dismissively put it. I'd never corrected them, partly because they never asked, partly because I didn't want them to suddenly value me only when I had something to offer. "Morning, Ms. Warren," the security guard greeted me. "Morning, Tony," I replied with a smile, heading for the elevator. I was reviewing the quarterly executive reports when my phone buzzed. "Mom." I hesitated, then answered. "Ashley, there's been some mistake with the mortgage payment," she said without preamble. "The bank says it wasn't received." I took a deep breath. "It's not a mistake. I canceled the payment." Silence. Then, "You what?" "But, we've been counting on that. Your father's retirement doesn't cover." "I know exactly what it covers, Mom. I've been covering the difference for 3 years." "Is this because of what your father said?" "He was just upset." "This isn't about him being upset. This is about me finally understanding where I stand with this family." My voice remained calm, though my hand gripped the phone tighter. "I'm a disgrace until the bills come due. Then suddenly I'm necessary." "Ashley, you're being childish," she snapped. "Family helps family." "Funny, I don't remember being treated like family when you uninvited me from your birthday to impress Claire's boyfriend." Another silence. "That's different." "No, it's actually the same. I'm either part of this family or I'm not. You can't have it both ways." "So you're punishing us? Over a silly argument?" I closed my eyes, steadying myself. "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just no longer setting myself on fire to keep other people warm." "What does that even?" "Goodbye, Mom. I have a meeting to get to." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly as I set down the phone. Throughout the day, the messages piled up. "Dad, where is the mortgage payment? Fix this now." "Claire, what the hell are you doing?" "Mom's freaking out about the mortgage." "Mom, the electric company called. Are you seriously doing this to us?" I read each one but didn't respond. What could I say that I hadn't already said 1,000 times before? That I mattered too? That I deserved respect? That I wasn't just a walking ATM? By evening, the tone of the messages had shifted. Dad, Ashley, I think we need to talk about this. Like adults. Claire, you're being super dramatic. Just pay the bills like you always do. Mom, please call me back, honey. We can work this out. I turned off my phone notifications and focused on the document open on my laptop, weekend operations for our Boston office. We were expanding, opening a new branch on the East Coast, and needed to transfer some key personnel. My eyes caught on a name, Liam Prescott. Current position, Head of Finance, New Jersey branch. Transferring to Boston HQ. I blinked, then read it again. Liam Prescott, Claire's new boyfriend, the one who was too important to meet me, was transferring to Boston. And as co-founder, would be his direct superior. A strange laugh escaped me, not from humor, but from the sheer irony of it all. The world was smaller than I had thought, and the universe had a peculiar sense of timing. I could reject the transfer, of course. I had that power. But something inside me knew this wasn't about revenge. This was about truth finally coming to light. I approved the transfer with a single click, then closed my laptop. The next morning, as I prepared for work, my phone buzzed with another message. Claire again, Mom's birthday is today. They've been calling the utility companies all morning but nobody's helping. Can you please stop being selfish for one day? Selfish. The word hung in my mind as I walked to the office. For years, I'd sacrificed my own needs to support my family. I'd stayed silent when they belittled my career, my choices, my very existence. I'd paid their bills, fixed their problems, and asked for nothing in return except basic respect, which they couldn't even provide. Yet I was the selfish one. I entered the conference room where my day would begin with our weekly executive meeting. The familiar faces of my colleagues greeted me, people who actually valued my input, my vision, my work. Everything okay, Ashley? My business partner Jared asked, noticing my distraction. I smiled, something genuine finally breaking through the tension of the past few days. Actually, I said, I think everything is finally going to be okay. Little did I know that okay would arrive sooner than expected, and in the most unexpected way imaginable. The office was buzzing with activity. Our Boston expansion had been in the works for months, but now it was finally happening. As I reviewed the personnel files for the transfers, I kept returning to one name, Liam Prescott. I'd never met Claire's boyfriend, had never even seen a photo of him. All I knew was that he was important enough that my family was ashamed to introduce me to him. And now, in some cosmic twist of irony, he would be reporting directly to me. The New Jersey transfers arrived today, my assistant reminded me, placing a stack of folders on my desk. First meetings start at 10. I nodded, checking my watch. Thanks, Melissa. I decided to handle this situation with professionalism. No grand reveals, no dramatic confrontations. I would simply be who I was, co-founder and head of operations at Pacific Genomics. If Liam recognized my last name and made the connection to Claire, so be it. At precisely 10 o'clock, there was a knock on my office door. Come in, I called, arranging the papers on my desk. The door opened, and a tall man in a charcoal suit entered. He had sandy brown hair, intelligent eyes, and the confident posture of someone who knew his worth. Ms. Warren? He extended his hand. Liam Prescott. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I stood and shook his hand firmly. Likewise, Mr. Prescott. I've heard good things about your work in New Jersey. He smiled, taking the seat I gestured to. I appreciate that. I've been looking forward to joining the Boston office. Your expansion plans are ambitious. I studied him as we discussed the quarterly projections. He was articulate, prepared, and clearly competent. No wonder Claire had been so eager to show him off to our parents. What I couldn't figure out was how someone like him had ended up with my self-centered sister. I understand you've been with us for about 3 years? I asked, reviewing his file. Yes, started in the finance department right after completing my MBA at Wharton. The company's mission really resonates with me, making healthcare diagnostics accessible to underserved communities. I nodded, somewhat impressed. Most people in finance didn't engage with our social mission so directly. And what brings you to Boston, Mr. Prescott? Besides the job, of course. A slight flush colored his cheeks. Personal connections, actually. My girlfriend's family lives in the area. I see. I kept my expression neutral. Well, we're happy to accommodate the transfer. Boston is a beautiful city. We continued discussing his role, the team he'd be managing, and the projects he'd oversee. Throughout the conversation, I waited for some hint of recognition, for him to notice my last name, to make the connection to Claire. But if he did, he showed no sign of it. As our meeting concluded, Liam gathered his papers and stood. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Warren. I look forward to working with you directly. Likewise. I extended my hand again. Welcome to Boston. After he left, I sat back in my chair, a strange feeling settling over me. Liam seemed genuinely dedicated to our company's mission. He was polished, yes, but not in the superficial way I'd expected from someone Claire would date. There was a depth to him, an authenticity that didn't align with my sister's usual type. More importantly, he clearly had no idea who I was. Which meant Claire had never mentioned having a sister, or if she had, she'd never shared my name. I wasn't sure which possibility stung more. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. By evening, I was exhausted. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed with a notification. Another message from my mother. Ashley, honey, please call me back. The power company said they'll shut off service tomorrow if the bill isn't paid. It's my birthday dinner tonight and nothing is working right. I don't know what to do. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to cave in, to transfer the money just to end their panic. But another part, the part that had endured years of being undervalued, remained firm. I typed a brief response, I'm no longer managing your utilities. Maybe ask Claire for help. Then I put my phone away and headed home. Later that evening, as I sat on my small balcony with a glass of tea, watching the city lights flicker to life, my phone began ringing. It wasn't my mother this time, or Claire, or my father. It was my Aunt Sharon, the only member of my extended family who had ever shown genuine interest in my life. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Ashley? Aunt Sharon's voice came through, oddly hushed. What's going on? Your mom's house is in chaos, no power, no water. Everyone's panicking. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. They didn't tell you? Dad said I was a disgrace to the family and not to show my face again. Mom uninvited me from her birthday because Claire's boyfriend is apparently too important to meet someone like me. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, Ashley. I had no idea. It doesn't matter, I said, though we both knew it did. They made their choice. They're trying to call the utility companies, but no one's helping, Sharon continued. Your mom's birthday dinner is ruined. I hadn't expected to feel a pang of satisfaction at that news, but I did. Maybe it's time they learned to solve their own problems. A commotion sounded in the background of the call, voices rising. Hold on, Sharon said. Claire's boyfriend just arrived. The poor guy looks confused about why dinner is being served by candlelight. My heart skipped a beat. Liam was there, witnessing my family in crisis mode. I could almost picture it, my mother flustered, my father angry, Claire trying to maintain her perfect image despite the circumstances. Ashley? A new voice suddenly came through the phone, male, familiar. Ashley Warren? My breath caught. On the other end of the line, worlds were about to collide. I gripped my phone tighter, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. Liam? You're Nicole Warren from Pacific Genomics? Claire's sister? His voice carried clear confusion and something else, shock. Yes, I answered simply. There was a brief silence, then shuffling sounds, and voices rising in the background. Who are you talking to? I heard my mother ask distantly. It's Ashley, Aunt Sharon replied. I called to find out what's happening with the utilities. More shuffling, then my mother's voice, louder now, Ashley? Is she behind this? I can't believe she'd be so heartless. Nicole, what's going on? Liam asked, his voice lower now, as if he'd stepped away from the others. The house has no power, no water. Claire's parents are saying you usually handle these things? I took a deep breath. Yes, I've been paying their bills for years. I stopped after they told me I was a disgrace to the family and uninvited me from my mother's birthday dinner. Because of you, actually. Because of me? Genuine confusion colored his voice. They didn't want you to meet me. Said you were too important, and my job was too embarrassing to explain. A beat of silence. Your job as co-founder of Pacific Genomics? The company revolutionizing accessible healthcare diagnostics? That embarrassing job? Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly. The very one. Wait, he said, understanding dawning in his voice. You're my boss. I just met with you this morning. Yes. And Claire's family has been, what? Hiding you? More like dismissing me, I clarified. They think I work some low-level administrative job. They've never asked, and I've never corrected them. A commotion sounded in the background again, louder this time. I heard my father's voice. Is that Ashley? Let me talk to her right now. Hold on, Liam said to me, then his voice became muffled as if he'd covered the phone. I couldn't make out what was being said, but the tone was tense. Then suddenly, Liam's voice came through clearly again, but he wasn't talking to me. He was addressing my family. She's my direct supervisor at Pacific Genomics. She's the co-founder who approved my transfer to Boston. The silence that followed was so complete I could almost feel it through the phone. I pictured the scene, my family frozen in shock, Claire's perfectly composed image crumbling, my father's face probably turning that particular shade of red it did when his worldview was challenged. That's impossible, Claire's voice finally broke the silence, tight with disbelief. My sister works in some office job. She's not anyone's boss. She's not just anyone's boss, Liam corrected, his tone surprisingly firm. She's one of the most respected executives in the biotech industry. The company she co-founded is revolutionizing healthcare accessibility. More silence. I felt a strange lightness in my chest, not satisfaction exactly, but the peculiar relief of a truth finally exposed to air after being buried for too long. Ashley? Aunt Sharon was back on the phone, her voice soft with something like newfound respect. Are you still there? Yes, I replied, my own voice steadier than I expected. I think you should know that everyone here looks, well, stunned is probably the word. Especially your parents. I closed my eyes for a moment. I never lied to them, Sharon. They just never bothered to ask. They were too busy being disappointed in me to notice what I was actually doing with my life. I know, honey. I know. A pause. Liam wants to speak with you again. Before I could respond, his voice returned. Nicole, Ashley, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Claire never mentioned any of this. I'm not surprised, I said, feeling strangely calm now. Claire has always been the center of her own universe. And my parents have always enabled it. Well, they're certainly not the center of anything right now, he said, a hint of dry humor in his voice. They look like they've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, I corrected. Just the daughter they chose to ignore until they needed her. There was a brief silence, then Liam spoke again, his voice quiet but clear. For what it's worth, I admire what you've built. Both professionally and personally. It takes strength to set boundaries like this. I hadn't expected that. From Claire's boyfriend of all people. "Thank you," I said simply. "I should probably get back," he said. "This birthday dinner is, well, it's something." "I can imagine," I replied. "Tell them I hope they figure out their utility situation." "I will." A pause. "I'll see you at the office tomorrow, Ms. Warren." "See you tomorrow, Mr. Prescott." The call ended, and I sat there on my balcony, watching the city lights blur slightly through unexpected tears. Not tears of sadness, but of something more complex, relief, perhaps, or vindication. For years, I'd carried the burden of my family's dismissal, their casual cruelty, their constant undermining. And now, in one unexpected phone call, everything had shifted. I wondered what was happening in that house now. Were they scrambling to reconcile this new reality with the narrative they'd constructed? Were they already planning how to spin this to their advantage, how to reclaim me now that I had proven valuable in their eyes? My phone lit up with incoming messages almost immediately. "Claire, you knew all along, didn't you? You let this happen right during the party." Mom's crying. Liam is in shock. "How could you be so cruel?" "Dad, Ashley, call me immediately. We need to discuss this situation like adults." "Mom, I never expected you to choose this way to get back at the family." I read each message, feeling a strange detachment. Get back at them? I hadn't done anything except stop enabling their behavior. I hadn't planned for Liam to be transferred to Boston, that was just the universe's sense of timing. I hadn't orchestrated this revelation, that was Aunt Sharon's doing, however unintentional. All I had done was stop pretending I was less than I was. Stop financing their lives while they belittled mine. After several minutes of thought, I responded only to Claire's message. "I didn't do anything, Claire. I was just at home. I didn't start the video call. I didn't tell Liam I was his boss. I simply stopped hiding who I am and what I've built." If a single truth was enough to ruin the party, maybe the problem isn't with the truth. I set my phone down and took a deep breath of the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, facing Liam at the office, dealing with the inevitable barrage of calls and messages from my family. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt at peace with my choices. The tightly wound knot of anxiety and resentment that had lived in my chest for as long as I could remember had finally begun to loosen. I wasn't naive enough to think this would magically repair my relationship with my family, but something had fundamentally changed. The truth was finally out, hanging in the open air between us, impossible to ignore or dismiss. And with that truth came possibility, maybe not for reconciliation, at least not yet, but for something I'd never fully experienced with my family. Respect. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, needing time to prepare myself mentally for the inevitable encounter with Liam. As I settled at my desk with my coffee, my phone lit up with an email notification. From Liam Prescott, subject, apology and resignation. I stared at the screen, my coffee forgotten. Resignation? I opened the email, a knot forming in my stomach. Ms. Warren. After last night's revelations, I feel I should offer both an apology and my resignation. I had no idea about your relationship with Claire or the family dynamics at play. I would never have put you in such an uncomfortable position had I known. I understand if you feel there's a conflict of interest given the personal connection. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. Respectfully, Liam. I set my phone down, mulling over his words. Of all the reactions I'd anticipated, this wasn't one of them. His response was measured, professional, acknowledging the awkwardness without making it my problem to solve. I tapped out a quick reply. Liam. Your apology is appreciated but unnecessary. You didn't create this situation, and I see no reason why it should affect our professional relationship. Your resignation is not accepted. We can discuss this further in person if you'd like. Ashley Warren. I pressed send, then leaned back in my chair. Conflict of interest? Perhaps. But somehow it felt wrong to punish Liam for my family's shortcomings. Just as I was about to begin reviewing the day's reports, my office door opened without a knock. Melissa, my usually composed assistant, burst in, her eyes wide. "Ms. Warren, your sister is in the lobby demanding to see you." Security is trying to calm her down, but she's creating quite a scene. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course Claire would show up here. Of course she would make a spectacle. It was what she did best: command attention, disrupt normalcy, make everything about her. "Send her up," I said, my voice calm despite the tension coiling in my chest. "But have security escort her. And stay nearby. If this gets out of hand, I'll need you to intervene." Melissa nodded and hurried out. I stood, smoothing my skirt, and positioned myself by the window. I didn't want to be sitting when Claire entered, didn't want to give her the higher ground, even symbolically. Minutes later, my office door opened again. Claire stormed in, her face flushed, her normally perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. Security hovered just outside the door. "How could you?" she demanded without preamble, her voice sharp with anger. "How could you humiliate me like that in front of Liam?" I studied her, this sister who had always been the center of attention, the golden child. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of the pedestal our parents had placed her on. "Hello to you too, Claire," I said evenly. "Don't play games with me, Ashley. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted to ruin my relationship." I shook my head. I didn't know Liam was being transferred to Boston until I saw his name come across my desk. I had no idea he was your boyfriend until yesterday. "You never even told him you had a sister, did you?" She faltered slightly. "That's not, I mentioned you, but not by name," I finished for her. "Not that I was in biotech. Certainly not that I co-founded a company." "Why is that, Claire? What were you so afraid of?" "I wasn't afraid of anything," she snapped. Why does it even matter? The point is, Liam broke up with me last night after everything went down. He said he couldn't be with someone who treated their family that way." I blinked, genuinely surprised. "He broke up with you?" "Yes. And it's your fault." Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "You had to go and be all successful and make me look bad. That's always been your problem, you can't just accept your place." "My place?" I repeated, something cold settling in my chest. "And what place is that exactly?" "You know what I mean," she muttered, looking away. "You were supposed to be the quiet one, the one who helped out in the background. Not this." She gestured vaguely around my office. For a moment, I said nothing, letting her words hang in the air between us. The truth of how she saw me, how they all saw me, laid bare in her careless statement. "I think you should leave, Claire," I finally said, my voice soft but firm. "We clearly have nothing more to say to each other." "No, I'm not going anywhere until you fix this," she insisted, stepping closer. "Call Liam. Tell him it was all a misunderstanding. Tell him." "I will not lie for you," I cut her off. "And I certainly won't manipulate an employee for your benefit. Whatever happened between you and Liam is between you two." "But he respects you," she persisted, desperation edging into her voice. "He kept talking about how impressive your work is, how much integrity you have. If you just—" "Claire," I interrupted again, firmly this time. "Stop. This conversation is over." She stared at me, her expression shifting from anger to something else, something I'd never seen on her face before. Uncertainty. Maybe even a flicker of respect. "You've changed," she said finally. "No," I replied. "I'm exactly who I've always been. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time." Claire opened her mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. Without another word, she turned and walked out, shoulders slumped in a way that was entirely foreign to her confident posture. As the door closed behind her, I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. The interaction had lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours had passed. My phone buzzed again, a message from my father: "We need to talk." Your mother is upset. Family dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. Don't be late. Not, please come, or, we'd like to see you. Just another command, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. And as I stared at the message, I knew exactly how I would respond. Sunday evening arrived with a crisp autumn chill. I stood outside my parents' house, keys in hand, not the house keys they'd given me years ago, but my car keys, ready for a quick departure if necessary. I'd replied to my father's demand with a simple, "I'll be there." No explanation, no argument. Just 3 words that gave nothing away about my intentions. The door opened before I could knock. My father stood there, his expression an awkward mixture of sternness and uncertainty. "You're here," he stated, as if confirming it to himself. I said I would be, I replied evenly, stepping inside. The house was dimly lit, warmer than usual. The smell of my mother's pot roast, her signature dish for important family occasions, filled the air. A calculated choice, no doubt. A reminder of happier times, of family dinners when I was still the dutiful daughter who financed their lives without complaint. My mother hovered in the kitchen doorway, a dish towel clutched in her hands. "Ashley," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "You came." I nodded but didn't move to embrace her. Claire was noticeably absent. "Sit down," my father directed, gesturing to the dining table. "We have things to discuss." The table was set for 4, though only 3 of us were present. I took my usual spot, the chair facing away from the window, the one that had always been mine during countless family dinners where my achievements went unacknowledged while Claire's were celebrated. My father cleared his throat as my mother brought the serving dishes to the table. "Your sister won't be joining us tonight. She's taking some time to process everything." I nodded. "I'm sure finding out your boyfriend broke up with you because of how your family treats your sister must be difficult to process." My mother flinched slightly at my directness. My father's jaw tightened. "About that," he began, serving himself a generous portion of pot roast. "We've been thinking about what happened, and we may have been hasty in our judgment." "Hasty," I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Is that what we're calling years of dismissal and disrespect now?" "Ashley," my mother interjected, her voice carrying that familiar note of passive disapproval. "We're trying to make amends here." "Are you?" I asked, meeting her gaze directly. "Because it sounds like you're trying to minimize what happened so we can go back to the way things were." My father set down his fork with a sharp clink. "Look, we admit we were wrong about your job. We had no idea you were so successful. You never told us." "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were too busy being disappointed in me to notice what I was actually doing with my life." A heavy silence settled over the table. My mother pushed food around her plate, not eating. My father stared at his glass of water as if it might offer some solution. Finally, he spoke again, his voice softer. "The mortgage is due next week. And the utility companies are threatening to shut everything off again. We need your help, Ashley." There it was. The real reason for this dinner, this sudden desire for amends. Not because they valued me, but because they needed my financial support. "I see," I said quietly. "So this isn't about making amends. It's about making sure the bills get paid." "No, it's not like that," my mother protested, but the flicker of guilt in her eyes betrayed her. "We do want to repair our relationship. We just also have these practical concerns." I set my napkin down beside my untouched plate. "Let me be clear about something. I don't owe you my financial support. I don't owe you anything. For years, I helped because I thought that's what family did for each other. But I've realized that in this family, support only flows one way, toward whoever you've decided matters most." My father's face reddened. "That's not fair, Ashley. We raised you, put a roof over your head. And I've been putting a roof over yours for the past 3 years," I cut in, my voice steady. "I've paid your mortgage, your utilities, your property taxes. I've covered home repairs and medical bills. And in return, you've treated me like I was nothing." My mother's eyes welled with tears. "We never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said simply. "Over and over again. And now you want me to forget all that because you've discovered I'm successful enough to be useful to you." "So what now?" my father asked, his tone hardening. "You'll just abandon your family when we need you?" I let out a small, incredulous laugh. That's rich, coming from the man who told me not to call him father anymore. Who said I was a disgrace to this family? He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. I was angry. "I didn't mean it." "You did mean it," I corrected him. "You just didn't expect there to be consequences." I stood up, my decision made. "I'll pay your mortgage and utilities for 3 more months. That should give you enough time to figure out a more sustainable solution. After that, you're on your own." 3 months, my mother gasped. "But that's not enough time to." "It's more than enough time," I interrupted. "You could sell this house and downsize. Dad could come out of retirement and work part-time. Claire could actually contribute financially instead of just emotionally draining everyone. There are options, you've just never had to consider them because I was your safety net." My father's expression darkened. "And what about family? Does that mean nothing to you anymore?" I paused, considering his question. "Family means everything to me," I said finally. "Real family, the kind that supports each other, respects each other, values each other. If you want to be that kind of family, I'm open to it. But I won't be used anymore." I turned to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. "And what would that look like?" she asked softly. "Being a real family?" I looked back at her, seeing something I hadn't noticed before, a genuine desire to understand, perhaps even to change. "It would start with getting to know me," I replied. "Not the daughter you wished I was, but the woman I actually am. It would mean celebrating my successes instead of dismissing them. It would mean treating me with the same respect you've always given Claire." My father nodded slowly, a newfound thoughtfulness in his eyes. "We could try that," he said, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "I'd like that," I said honestly. "But understand this, it doesn't come with financial strings attached. My love and my money are separate things now." I walked out the front door into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I had set clear boundaries with my family. I had stood up for myself without anger, without spite, just with the quiet confidence of knowing my own worth. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Thank you for coming tonight. I know we have a lot of work to do, but I hope we can try. I love you, Ashley." It wasn't everything. It wasn't an explicit acknowledgement of all they'd done wrong, or a detailed plan for how they would change. But it was a start, perhaps the first honest communication we'd had in years. The next morning, as I walked to my office, I spotted Liam waiting by the coffee station, 2 cups in hand. He offered one to me with a small, uncertain smile. "Good morning, Ms. Warren." "Good morning, Mr. Prescott," I replied, accepting the coffee. "And under the circumstances, I think you can call me Ashley." He nodded, relief visible in his expression. "Ashley, then. I wanted to thank you for not accepting my resignation. That was generous, considering everything." I shrugged. "It wouldn't have been fair to punish you for my family's shortcomings." "Still," he said, "not everyone would have seen it that way." We walked together toward the conference room where our morning meeting would begin. "I heard you broke up with my sister," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He hesitated, then nodded. "I did. I hope that doesn't make things awkward between us." "Not at all," I assured him. "I just hope it was for the right reasons." "It was," he said simply. "I couldn't be with someone who treats their family the way she treated you. It made me question everything else about her." I nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Not because she's my sister, but because respect is fundamental." We reached the conference room door. Before entering, Liam paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask," I replied with a small smile. "How did you do it? Build all this while being treated that way at home?" Most people would have been crushed by that kind of dismissal. I considered his question carefully. "I think I stopped looking for validation in the wrong places," I said finally. "I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it, and started building something I could be proud of regardless of who noticed." He nodded thoughtfully, and in his eyes I saw genuine admiration, not for my title or my success, but for the strength it had taken to get here. As we joined our colleagues at the conference table, I felt a sense of completion. The journey hadn't been easy, and the relationships I'd hoped to repair might never fully heal. But I had found my voice. I had claimed my worth. And in doing so, I had finally found peace with who I was and who I wanted to be. Not a doormat, not an ATM, not the family disappointment. Just Ashley Warren, whole and complete on her own terms.